The desert wind howled like a distant wolf, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and diesel through the cracked windows of Ethan's battered Harley. It was just past midnight, the kind of hour where the stars hung low and indifferent over the endless stretch of cracked asphalt. Ethan Cross, 38 and weathered like the leather jacket clinging to his broad shoulders, had been riding for hours, chasing the ghosts that always seemed to follow him on these solitary runs. His crew, the Iron Vipers, was back in the city, nursing beers and old wounds, but Ethan preferred the solitude, or so he told himself. The neon sign of the roadside station flickered erratically ahead, a relic from better days, its open 24/7 promise long faded to a lie. The place was a skeleton of rusted pumps and boarded-up windows, abandoned years ago after some corporate shuffle. Ethan pulled up anyway, the engine's rumble fading to a low growl as he killed the ignition. His throat was parched, and the cooler strapped to his bike held nothing but empty cans now. He swung his leg over, boots crunching on gravel, and scanned the lot. Empty, save for the shadows playing tricks under the single buzzing light. That's when he heard it, a soft, muffled sob, barely cutting through the wind. Ethan's hand instinctively went to the knife at his belt, a habit from too many bar fights and back-alley deals. He froze, ears straining. The sound came again from behind the derelict station, where a chain-link fence sagged like a defeated fighter. Circling the building, his flashlight beams slicing the darkness, he spotted her. A small figure huddled against the wall, knees drawn to her chest, a threadbare blanket draped over thin shoulders. She couldn't have been more than 7, her dark hair tangled and face streaked with dirt, alone, in the middle of nowhere. Ethan's gut twisted. Kids didn't just appear in places like this. Not at this hour. He approached slowly, boots deliberate on the gravel to announce himself, not wanting to spook her. "Hey, kid," he said, voice gravelly from disuse, crouching to her level, but keeping a respectful distance. The beam of his light caught her eyes, wide, unnaturally calm for someone crying. No terror, just a quiet resignation that hit him harder than any punch. "You okay? What's a little one like you doing out here?" She lifted her head, wiping her nose on the blanket's edge. Up close, she was even smaller, her clothes mismatched and oversized, like hand-me-downs from a forgotten closet. "I'm waiting," she said simply, her voice steady, almost rehearsed. No accent Ethan could place, but the words carried a weight, like she'd been practicing them. Waiting for who? He glanced around, half expecting headlights to pierce the night, but the road remained a black ribbon to infinity. His mind raced. Runaway. Lost tourist. Worse. The Vipers had a code. You saw trouble. You stepped in. But this felt personal, a pull he couldn't shake. "For someone who knows me." She tilted her head, studying him with those 2 old eyes. The sobbing had stopped, replaced by a watchful silence. Ethan pulled a water bottle from his saddlebag, his last one, and offered it. She took it without hesitation, sipping slowly, her small hands steady. He sat back on his heels, the cool metal of the fence pressing into his palm. "All right, let's start simple. What's your name?" "Lily." Just like that. No pause. No fear. "Okay, Lily. I'm Ethan. You got family around? Parents? Anyone I can call?" He fished his phone from his pocket, signal bars mocking him with their emptiness. Dead zone. Figures. She shook her head, handing back the empty bottle. "They went away. But you looked like her." Ethan frowned, the words landing like a stone in still water. "Like who?" "Like Auntie Ray." The name slipped out soft as a whisper, but it slammed into Ethan like a freight train. Ray, short for Rayleigh, his little sister, gone 5 years now. No one called her that anymore. Hell, no one but him and their old man had even known the nickname from their childhood summers, hiding from the world in that dusty trailer park. Ray had been the dreamer, the one who promised they'd escape together, build something real. But promises had a way of breaking in their family. His blood ran cold, a chill unrelated to the night air. "How do you know that name, kid? Who told you?" Lily's gaze didn't waver. "She did. Auntie Ray said if I ever got lost, to find someone who knew her secret name, that it'd mean I'm safe." She pulled the blanket tighter, revealing a faded patch sewn on the corner. A tiny viper coiled around a rose, the Iron Viper's mark, Ethan's mark. His crew's emblem, one Ray had begged him to design for her bracelet before she left for that last job. The world tilted. Logic screamed coincidence, some cruel joke of the desert night. But guilt, that old familiar beast, clawed at his chest. Ray had vanished in a crash up north. Her bike twisted metal on a rain-slick road. No body recovered, just whispers of bad luck. Ethan had buried the pain, ridden it out mile by mile. But now this child, with eyes that echoed Ray's stubborn spark, was unraveling it all. He stood slowly, mind reeling. "Lily, listen to me. How long you been out here? And Ray, your auntie, she's not coming back." The words tasted like ash. He couldn't say it outright, not to this ghost of a girl. "I'm not lost," Lily insisted, standing too, barely reaching his waist. "I was supposed to meet her here, but the bad people came first. They took my things, but I remembered what she said, about the rider with the scars." Her eyes flicked to the faded tattoo peeking from his sleeve, a jagged line from a long-ago brawl. And Ray had inked herself in a fit of sisterly rebellion. Ethan's breath caught. Scars, plural. Only Ray knew the full story, the one from the fire that took their mum, the one he hid under ink and attitude. This wasn't random. This was a thread pulling him back to a promise he'd half forgotten. Ray's last call, slurred with exhaustion, begging him to watch over the little one if things went south. He'd dismissed it as her usual drama, too wrapped in his own regrets. The wind picked up, rattling the fence like bones. Ethan knelt again, voice low and urgent. "Kid, you gotta tell me everything. Who are these bad people, and how the hell do you know me?" Lily hesitated, then reached into her pocket, pulling out a crumpled photo. Faded edges, but clear enough. Ray, laughing, arm around a toddler version of this girl, the desert horizon behind them. On the back, in Ray's looping script, "For Ethan, keep your promise. Family's what we make." In that moment, under the flickering light, Ethan's world cracked open. The lone biker, the drifter who'd outrun his past, was no longer alone. A child's quiet trust and a sister's ghost had just drafted him into something bigger, a ride that would test every scar, every oath he'd ever sworn. And as the first hints of dawn bled across the sky, Ethan knew this wasn't the end of his solitude. It was the spark that would call his crew, ignite old loyalties, and chase down the shadows threatening the one link to Ray he never knew he had. He scooped Lily up gently, her weight light as a promise unkept, and carried her to his bike. The engine roared to life, a vow in the night. They were heading north, toward answers, toward justice that didn't come from fists, but from the unyielding pull of blood and honor. But first, a call to the Vipers. 50 strong, they'd ride for this, for Ray, for the family that chose you when the world turned its back. The first rays of dawn clawed their way over the jagged horizon, painting the desert in strokes of bruised purple and gold. Ethan's Harley thrummed beneath him, a steady pulse against the uncertainty churning in his chest. Lily clung to his back, her small arms wrapped tight around his waist, her cheek pressed against the worn leather of his jacket. She hadn't said a word since they'd left the station, but her silence spoke volumes. Trust earned in the flicker of a flashlight, fragile as the photo now tucked in his pocket. The road unspooled ahead, a ribbon of cracked blacktop flanked by sentinel cacti and the occasional tumbleweed skittering like fleeing shadows. Ethan's mind raced faster than the engine. Ray's script on that photo burned behind his eyes. "Keep your promise." What promise? The fragments came back in flashes, the late-night call 5 years ago, Ray's voice thick with fatigue over a bad connection. "Ethan, if I don't make it back, there's a kid. Little one, she's got no one else. Promise me you'll look out." He'd laughed it off then, chalked it up to her wandering ways, the jobs that took her from one dusty town to the next. Ray had always been the fixer, patching up strays and dreams alike. But this, a child with her secrets etched into every word. It felt like the universe dragging him back, chains he'd thought rusted through. He glanced at the side mirror, catching Lily's reflection. Her eyes were half closed, lulled by the vibration, but alert enough to scan the empty road. No tail, no lights piercing the growing light. Still, the bad people she'd mentioned gnawed at him. Who left a 7-year-old in the dust like discarded baggage? His hand tightened on the throttle. The Vipers Clubhouse was a 3-hour ride north, a fortified barn on the outskirts of Redstone, where loyalty was forged in chrome and sweat. He needed backup, eyes that knew how to spot trouble before it struck. Pulling over at a weathered picnic table off the highway, its paint peeled like old skin, Ethan killed the engine. The sudden quiet amplified the distant call of a coyote, a lonely echo in the vastness. He eased Lily down, her boots touching the gravel with a soft crunch. She rubbed her eyes, the blanket draped over her shoulders like a cape of forgotten adventures. "You hungry?" he asked, rummaging in his saddlebag for a stale protein bar. It wasn't much, but her nod was grateful, small teeth nibbling methodically. As she ate, Ethan fired up his phone, one bar of signal flickering like hope. He punched in the number for Jax, his second in command, the man who'd pulled him from more than one wreckage. The line crackled, then connected. "Cross, that you? Thought you were ghosting us for another solo run. Jax, listen close. Got a situation. Kid with me, girl, about 7. Says she's connected to Ray." The words hung heavy, and he heard Jax's sharp intake of breath. Ray's disappearance had fractured the crew. She'd been the glue, the one who humanized their rough edges with her quiet fire. A pause, then Jax's voice, low and steady. "Ray, man, that's... You sure? Where you at?" "Edge of the Badlands, heading your way. She mentioned bad people chasing her. Got a photo. It's her, Jax, with the kid. I need the full crew mobilized. Quiet but ready. No badges, no noise till we know what we're riding into." Jax didn't question. That was the Viper way. Promises didn't need explanations. "On it. I'll round 'em up. 60 strong by noon. Ride safe, brother. For Ray." The call ended, and Ethan pocketed the phone, turning back to Lily. She was watching him, the protein bar wrapper crumpled in her fist. "They're coming, the riders with the snakes." He nodded, crouching to her level, the morning chill seeping through his jeans. "Yeah, kid, family like that doesn't leave one of their own hanging. Now tell me more about these bad people. What did they want?" Lily's gaze dropped to the ground, tracing patterns in the dirt with her toe. The calm from before cracked, revealing a flicker of fear, raw but contained, like embers under ash. "They came to the house where Auntie Ray hid me, said I belonged to them now, took the papers, the ones with my name, but she told me to run if they showed, to find the road and wait for the one with the scars." She pointed to his arm, the tattoo, a map of old battles. "You're him, the uncle she talked about." Ethan's throat tightened. Uncle. The word landed like a key in a long-locked door. Ray had built a life he never knew, shielding this child from whatever storm had uprooted her. What house? Where was this? "Up by the river bend, the old mill town. We weren't supposed to stay long. Auntie said it was temporary till you came around." Her voice wavered, the first real crack in her composure. "But then the accident. She didn't come back. They said it was her fault. But I know it wasn't. They pushed her bike. I heard them laughing after. The pieces slotted unevenly. Ray's crash. Ruled an accident, but whispers in the crew had always hinted at foul play. Rival gangs? Debt collectors? Ethan had buried it deep, ridden away from the questions. Now they resurfaced, tied to this slip of a girl with Ray's unyielding eyes. "No more running alone, Lily. We're getting answers. Together." He lifted her back onto the bike, the engine's roar drowning the doubts. As they merged onto the highway, the sun crested fully, bathing the landscape in unforgiving light. Ethan felt the weight of eyes on them. Not real, but imagined, shadows lengthening with every mile. The Vipers would meet them, a thunder of leathers and loyalty. But this ride was already changing him. The drifter's isolation cracked, revealing the man Ray had always believed in, the one who kept promises, even the ones whispered in the dead of night. Hours blurred into a haze of heat shimmer and wind-whipped hair. Redstone's outskirts appeared like a mirage, low-slung buildings etched with graffiti, the air thick with the tang of oil and barbecue from roadside shacks. The clubhouse loomed, a converted warehouse with Viper banners snapping in the breeze. Bikes lined the lot, engines cooling like patient beasts. Jax waited at the gate, arms crossed, his salt and pepper beard framing a face etched with concern. Behind him the crew milled, 50 faces hardened by roads and regrets, but united in the nod they gave Ethan as he pulled up. Lily slid down, clutching the blanket, her eyes wide at the sea of leather. Jax knelt, offering a gentle smile that belied his bulk. "Hey, little rider. Name's Jax. You safe now?" She nodded, but stayed close to Ethan, her hand finding his. The crew parted as Ethan led her inside, the heavy door thudding shut behind them. In the dim common room, scarred tables and the faint scent of stale coffee, he laid out the photo. Murmurs rippled. Ray's laugh frozen in time, the child's face a mirror of loss. "We ride for her," Ethan said, voice steady as the desert dawn. "For the promise she left us. No vengeance, just truth. Whoever these shadows are, they don't get to break what's ours." The crew rumbled agreement, fists thumping tables like oaths sworn. But as plans took shape, scouts to the mill town, quiet inquiries into Ray's last days, Ethan caught Lily's eye. In that glance, the moral weight settled. This wasn't just about payback, it was redemption. Piecing together a family from fragments of honor and quiet courage. The road ahead promised storms, but for the first time in years, Ethan didn't ride alone. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The clubhouse air hung thick with the scent of oiled leather and fresh-brewed coffee, a sanctuary carved from the bones of old industry. Sunlight slanted through grimy windows, casting long shadows across the scarred wooden tables where the iron vipers gathered. Ethan stood at the head, the crumpled photo of Ray and toddler Lily spread out like a map to buried truths. 50 pairs of eyes fixed on him, brothers in arms, each carrying their own scars from roads less traveled. Jax flanked him, a pillar of quiet strength, while Lily sat perched on a stool nearby, her small frame dwarfed by the oversized viper patch Jax had draped over her like a shield. She nibbled on a sandwich, watching the men with the same unflinching calm that had first unnerved Ethan. "We start with facts," Ethan said, his voice cutting through the low murmur like a knife through fog. He traced the photo's edge. Ray's smile a ghost that pulled at the edges of his resolve. "Ray hid her here, Milltown by the river bend. That's our first stop. Scouts out, low profile, no colors flying till we know the lay." Nods rippled through the room, the crew's loyalty a tangible force, forged in nights of shared rides and unspoken vows. These weren't just bikers, they were the family Ray had woven into her life, the ones who'd stand when blood ties frayed. Jax leaned in, his gravelly tone laced with caution. "Heard whispers back when Ray went down. Some outfit out that way, call themselves the Dust Hounds, not a club, more like scavengers. Prey on the lost, collect debts that ain't theirs. If they got to her..." He trailed off, glancing at Lily, who met his gaze without flinching. The girl had barely spoken since arriving, but her presence anchored them, a living echo of Ray's final plea. Ethan felt the weight of it settle deeper, a moral anchor dragging against the tide of his doubts. He'd spent years outrunning guilt, the fire that claimed their mom, the fights that marked his skin, the way he'd let Ray drift into danger alone. Now, this child, with her secrets and steady eyes, forced him to confront it. Was he the uncle she needed, or just another drifter chasing shadows? He pushed the thought down, focusing on the plan. Talon, you and Reese take the lead scout. Eyes on the mill, quiet recon. Rest of us hold here, ready to roll if it heats up. The crew dispersed with efficient purpose, boots thudding on the concrete floor like distant thunder. Talon, a wiry vet with a hawk's gaze, clapped Ethan's shoulder. For Ray, brother, we make this right. Outside, engines coughed to life in the lot, a symphony of chrome and resolve as the scouts peeled away toward the riverlands. Ethan watched them go from the doorway, the midday sun baking the asphalt into waves of heat. Lily sidled up beside him, her hand slipping into his calloused palm, a gesture so natural it stole his breath. Uncle Ethan, she said softly, the title still foreign on her tongue. Auntie Ray said you'd come. That promises like yours don't break easy. Her words hung in the air, simple yet piercing, stirring the dust of old oaths. Ethan knelt, the gravel biting into his knees, and met her eyes, Ray's eyes, stubborn and clear. I should have been there sooner, kid, but I'm here now, no more hiding. Inside, the hours stretched, tension coiling like a spring in the clubhouse's dim heart. Maps unrolled across tables, marked with scribbled routes and question marks. Jax brewed more coffee, the pots gurgle a rhythmic counterpoint to the crew's hushed strategies. Stories of Ray surfaced in fragments, her laugh echoing through a rain-soaked rally, her hands steadying a fallen rider after a crash. Each tale wove her back into the fabric of their lives, a reminder that loyalty wasn't born of blood, but chosen in the fire of shared trials. By late afternoon, the scout's call crackled over the radio, static-laced urgency slicing the quiet. Cross, it's Talon. Milltown's a ghost, half the building's gutted, river running muddy from recent rains. Found the house Ray mentioned, boarded up, signs of a hasty exit, footprints in the dirt, small ones matching the kids. But there's more. Fresh tire tracks, heavy rigs, Dusthound's mark scratched on a doorpost. They were here, and not long ago. Ethan's grip tightened on the receiver, the plastic creaking under his fingers. Any sign of trouble now? Quiet, but watchful. Perimeter's got eyes. 2 goons patrolling the bridge. They're guarding something downstream near the old warehouse. Looks like they're moving goods, but not the legal kind. We hold position? Hold, Ethan confirmed, his mind racing through the ethical minefield, bust-in guns blazing. That was the easy path, the one corruption thrived on, escalating shadows into storms. No, this demanded precision, the poetry of justice that Ray had always championed. Uncover the truth, expose the rot without becoming it. He turned to the crew, voice steady. They're close. We ride at dusk. Flank 'em. Get eyes inside that warehouse. If Lily's people are tangled in this, we cut 'em free clean. Lily, who'd been listening from the corner, stood. They're not my people. Auntie said they take what's not theirs. Kids, promises, everything. Like they took her bike that night. Her voice trembled, the first fracture in her armor, revealing the child's fear beneath the rehearsed calm. Ethan pulled her into a loose hug, the scent of her tangled hair mingling with the club's faint tobacco haze. Then we take it back, not with fists first, but with what's right. As the sun dipped low, painting the horizon in fiery oranges, the Vipers mobilized. Engines roared in unison, a convoy of steel and honor thundering toward the river bend. Ethan rode point, Lily secured in a sidecar Jax had rigged from spare parts, a makeshift chariot for their smallest member. The wind whipped through, carrying the tang of brackish water and impending rain. Doubt gnawed at Ethan's edges. What if this pulled the crew into a web deeper than Ray's crash? What if his scars weren't enough to shield this fragile trust? The mill town emerged from the twilight haze, skeletal silos looming like forgotten sentinels against the swollen river. The air hummed with humidity, the distant lap of water underscoring the creak of rusted gates. The vipers fanned out, shadows among shadows, their presence a silent vow. Ethan dismounted near the boarded house, flashlight beam dancing over scuffed doorframes. Inside, the air was stale, laced with dust and faint echoes of life. A child's drawing tacked to the wall, a viper rose emblem sketched in crayon. Ray's touch, indelible. A low whistle from the perimeter signaled movement. Reese slipped back, face grim under his helmet. Warehouse lights on. 2 guards down easy, talked their way out of it, no blood. Inside, crates stacked high, but one's cracked open. Papers, kid-sized clothes, and a manifest. Names, routes. Looks like they're shipping more than goods. Lost ones, funneled north. Ethan's blood iced over. The moral outrage building like storm clouds. Not just thieves, but predators cloaked in the system's blind spots, exploiting the forgotten, twisting justice into chains. Lily's name on it? Reese nodded. And Ray's, listed as handler, crossed out after the date of her crash. They marked her gone, but the kid's still active. The revelation hit like a gut punch, confirming the whispers. Ray's accident no fluke, but a silencing. Ethan's resolve hardened, the drifter yielding to the guardian Ray had always seen in him. He signaled the crew. Encircle, observe, prepare. As night fully claimed the sky, stars pricking through like distant promises, they closed in. Justice here wouldn't roar, it would whisper, unearthing truths that corruption couldn't bury. For Ray, for Lily, for the family forged in chrome and quiet oaths, the ride had only begun to demand its toll. The night air clung heavy around the mill town, thick with the metallic tang of the river and the faint rot of abandoned timber. Stars wheeled overhead, indifferent witnesses to the shadows, slipping through the underbrush like ghosts reclaiming their ground. Ethan moved with the crew, a silent phalanx of leather and resolve, their boots muffled on the damp earth. The warehouse squatted downstream, its corrugated walls groaning under the weight of secrets, faint lantern light spilling from cracked windows like blood from a fresh wound. Lily stayed back with Jax in the tree line, her small form bundled in a spare jacket, eyes fixed on the operation with a mix of fear and fierce determination. Ethan had insisted, no risks for her, not yet. But her whispered, "Be careful, uncle," echoed in his ears, a tether pulling him toward the light. Talon led the flank, his wiry frame melting into the gloom as they circled the perimeter. The guards they'd talked down earlier were ghosts now, zip-tied and gagged in a tool shed, their muffled protests swallowed by the river's murmur. Ethan's pulse thrummed steady, not with rage, but with the quiet fire of purpose, the kind Ray had always kindled in him during their trailer park days, when promises were all they had against the world's grind. He signaled Reese, who nodded and slipped toward a side door, pry bar glinting faintly. The lock gave with a soft click, a concession from years of neglect, and they eased inside, the air shifting to stale warmth laced with oil and something sharper like fear distilled. Crates loomed in the dim interior, stacked like forgotten monuments under swaying bulbs. Dust motes danced in the beams, and the crew fanned out, flashlights hooded to narrow slits. Ethan approached the cracked crate Reese had mentioned, its lid ajar just enough to reveal chaos within. Folded clothes in child sizes, scribbled notebooks, and sheaves of paper yellowed with age. He knelt, the concrete biting cold through his jeans, and pulled a manifest free. Names blurred in the low light, dozens, crossed out or circled, routes sketched from border towns to northern hubs. Lily's stood out, inked fresh. LM, priority, river extract. Beside it, Ray's, handler RC, terminated post-incident, asset secured, terminated. The word landed like a blade between ribs, twisting the old wound of her crash wide open. Ethan traced the entry, his scarred finger smudging the ink. Ray hadn't just hidden Lily, she'd been the barrier, the one steering kids like her away from this web. The dust hounds weren't mere scavengers. They were a vein in something rotten, feeding on the lost, twisting authorities' blind eyes into complicity. Whispers from Jax earlier painted it clear. Local badges on payroll, shipments vanishing into relocation programs that reeked of exploitation. No wonder Ray's bike had ended in a ravine. She'd gotten too close, shining light where shadows profited. A low hiss from Talon pulled him back. Movement outside. Ethan doused his light, heart steadying as the crew melted into the stacks. Footsteps echoed from the main entrance, heavy and deliberate, accompanied by the scrape of a chair and a gravelly voice. "Shipment's late. Boss wants that priority kid accounted for by dawn, if the handler's ghost is still sniffing." The words trailed into a chuckle, dark and knowing, as two figures entered, their silhouettes bulky under flickering light. One carried a ledger, the other a radio crackling with static. Ethan pressed against a crate, breath shallow, the wood splinters pricking his palm. This was the edge, justice teetering between revelation and ruin. Burst out now, and they risked a firefight that painted them as the villains. Wait, observe, and maybe unravel the thread to the top. Ray's way, always the thinker, the one who'd say, "Truth cuts deeper than steel, Ethan. Make it count." He caught Reese's eye across the gloom, a silent command, "Hold." The men rifled through papers, oblivious at first, their talk weaving a net of corruption. That biker chick thought she could play savior. Pulled 3 off our line before we clipped her wings. Kid's the last loose end, family ties or not. Family. The word ignited something primal, but Ethan clamped it down, focusing on the details. Drop points, contact names, a sheriff's code slipping into the chatter. Proof, tangible as the manifest in his pocket, that could topple the whole facade without a single shot fired. But luck soured fast. One man paused, nose twitching. "Smell that? Cigarette? We got company." His hand dropped to a holster, the radio hissing to life. Ethan moved before thought, signaling the crew to withdraw. They ghosted toward the side door, a chain of shadows. But Reese's boot caught a loose board, a faint creak that shattered the quiet like glass. The men's heads snapped up, lights sweeping wild. "Out!" Ethan barked low, shoving Reese ahead. They bolted into the night, the warehouse erupting behind them in shouts and slamming doors. Engines roared to life in the distance, reinforcements, tires chewing gravel. The Vipers converged from the tree line. Jack's already revving his bike with Lily strapped secure. Ethan mounted up, the manifest burning against his chest, and gunned the throttle. The convoy thundered away, headlights slicing the dark as pursuit lights bloomed in the mirrors. 3 rigs, heavy and relentless, closing the gap. Wind lashed Ethan's face, the river's roar fading into the highway's hum. Lily's arms tightened around Jax's waist ahead, a small anchor in the chaos. Doubt clawed at him. Had they stirred the hornet's nest too soon? But as the first bullets whined past, harmless warnings in the night, resolve solidified. This wasn't vengeance, it was the promise awakening, Ray's legacy demanding they stand unbowed. The crew split the pack, weaving through back roads Jax knew like veins. Losing the tails in a maze of dust and moonlight, they regrouped at a forgotten overlook, engines idling low, the manifest passed hand to hand under starlight. Names, roots, enough to expose the rot to eyes that mattered, real guardians beyond the corrupt veil. Ethan met Lily's gaze, her face pale but steady. We got what we came for, kid. Truth first. Always. As the adrenaline ebbed, the moral path sharpened. Deliver the evidence clean, rally allies who'd honor the code without compromising it. The dust hounds would crumble not from force, but from the light of promises kept. Yet the night whispered warnings, deeper players, shadows with badges. Ethan's scars itched, a reminder that redemption rode tandem with risk, family chosen in the fire of what came next. If this tale of quiet courage stirs you, hit that like button. It fuels these rides through the dark. Your support keeps the promises rolling. The Overlook clung to the hillside like a scar on the earth's face, a forgotten pull-off where the highway surrendered to gravel and wild scrub. Moonlight silvered the landscape below, turning the river into a serpentine ribbon that wound through the valley's shadowed folds. Engines ticked softly as they cooled, the Vipers dismounting in a loose circle, their forms etched black against the star-pricked sky. Ethan leaned against his Harley, the manifest's edges crisp in his pocket, a talisman of truths unearthed. Adrenaline's sharp edge had dulled to a persistent thrum in his veins, but the weight of what they'd glimpsed in the warehouse lingered, heavy as the damp night air carrying hints of pine and distant rain. Lily huddled close to Jax, her small hands wrapped around a thermos of warm milk he'd scrounged from his pack. The crew kept a respectful distance, murmurs low as they passed the papers, under flashlight beams, hooded against prying eyes. Talon traced a route with his finger, voice a rumble. These drop points loop north. Small towns, no questions asked. Names here match old cases we brushed off as runaways. This ties it all, Ethan. Ray was knee-deep, pulling strings to derail him. Ethan nodded, the confirmation settling like gravel in his gut. Ray's terminated status wasn't just ink, it was a verdict, cold and calculated, from men who'd mistaken her quiet resolve for weakness. He glanced at Lily, her eyes reflecting the faint glow, wide but unblinking. She'd seen enough shadows in her short years to know when light pierced them. You recognize any of these places, kid? From before? She shook her head slowly, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. Auntie Ray never let me go far, but she talked about the river, how it carried secrets away, said if bad things came, we'd follow it to safety. Her words, simple as a child's drawing, carried Ray's echo, the dreamer who'd turned whispers into shields. Ethan felt the pull of that old promised titan, the one from their youth when she'd bandaged his burns and sworn they'd build a life beyond the ash. He'd failed her then, drifting into the Viper's code as escape. Now, Lily bridged the gap, demanding he step into the role Ray had carved for him in secret. Jax folded the manifest carefully, tucking it into a waterproof pouch. We can't sit on this. Evidence like this needs hands that bite back, folks outside the badge racket. Got a contact in the next county, old-timer named Harlan. Retired Fed, owes the club from that dust-up last spring. He can root it clean, no blowback on us. The crew grunted approval, the loyalty in their nods a silent oath. These men, etched with tattoos of serpents and roses, weren't storming fortresses. They were the quiet enforcers of moral lines, choosing restraint over the roar that corruption invited. But as the group tightened plans, a low rumble echoed from the valley floor, headlights flickering like fireflies through the underpass. Not theirs. Ethan straightened, hand drifting to his belt, the crew mirroring the motion in fluid instinct. Tails caught up, Reese muttered, peering through binoculars. Two vans unmarked, they're sweeping the roads, methodical, like hounds on a scent. The air thickened with tension, the night's hush broken only by the faint crackle of a radio in Jax's hand, scanning frequencies for chatter. Ethan's mind raced through the ethical fork. Ride hard and scatter, preserving the manifest but risking Lily in the crossfire? Or stand ground, turn the shadows against themselves? Ray's voice ghosted in his memory. Honor ain't loud, Ethan. It's the stand you take when no one's watching. He knelt beside Lily, her face pale in the moonlight. Stay with Jax. If things go south, you ride with him. Promise me. She nodded, fierce, her small hand squeezing his. In that grip, the scars on his arm burned anew, not with pain, but purpose. This child, woven from Ray's hidden life, had thawed the ice around his heart, revealing the family he'd chosen long ago in the Viper's ranks. "Form up!" Ethan commanded, voice low steel. The crew mounted in unison, engines whispering to life like conspirators. They peeled out in pairs, feinting toward the highway before doubling back through a narrow trail Jax knew, a vein of dirt and rock snaking along the ridge. The vans followed the bait, their lights veering wide, buying precious minutes. Ethan rode rear guard, Lily's sidecar secured behind Jax up front, the convoy a shadow dance against the cliffs. Wind clawed at his jacket, carrying the sharp scent of sage and exhaust, as they crested a rise and vanished into a copse of twisted junipers. Harlan's place was a 2-hour push east, a weathered cabin off a forgotten logging road, where the old man lived with ghosts of cases unsolved. Dawn crept in as they arrived, grey light filtering through fog-shrouded pines, the air crisp with dew and wood smoke from his chimney. Harlan met them at the door, grizzled face sharpening at the sight of the crew. 50 strong now, reinforcements trickling in via back channels. "Cross," he greeted, ushering them into the warmth of a kitchen scarred by years of stakeouts. "Heard you stirred the nest. What's the play?" Ethan spread the manifest on the oak table, the papers stark under the hanging bulb. Lily sat quietly in the corner, a mug of cocoa steaming before her, but her eyes tracked every word. Harlan scanned the entries, his expression hardening like cooling iron. "This is gold. Roots match a pattern I've chased for years. Kids vanishing into programs, badges looking the other way for a cut. Your sister's name. She was onto them, feeding tips anonymous. That crash. No accident. Brake lines cut. Witnesses bought off. The revelation landed soft but seismic, confirming the rot's depth. Ray hadn't died fleeing. She'd been hunted for her light. Ethan's fists clenched on the table's edge, knuckles whitening, but he held the rage, channeling it into resolve. "We want it handled right. No vigilante runs. Expose it top to bottom. For her, for the kid." Harlan nodded, already dialing a secure line to allies in the clean corners of the system, prosecutors untainted, journalists with spines. The crew stood vigil, a wall of leather and quiet honor, as the old man wove the threads into a net. But as the call ended, a distant engine growl pierced the morning calm. Scouts reporting movement on the perimeter, the dust hounds scenting blood, were closing in. Ethan scooped Lily up, her weight a reminder of stakes beyond revenge. "Time to move. Harlan, you hold the fort here?" the Fed affirmed, pulling a shotgun from under the counter. The Vipers thundered out, convoy splitting into decoys, and the core group ferrying Lily north to a safe house Jax had prepped, a remote ranch where Ray had once hidden strays. The ride blurred into a tapestry of dawn's gold and rising mist. Ethan's thoughts a whirlwind of redemption's cost. He'd lost Ray to silence, but in Lily's trust he reclaimed a piece. The uncle, the brother, the man who kept promises against the tide. Yet the shadows pursued, their moral corruption a storm brewing. Justice demanded more than escape. It required the crew's unyielding stand, turning personal scars into a legacy of light. As the ranch's fence loomed, a beacon in the haze, Ethan knew the true ride lay ahead, confronting the heart of the darkness, not with thunder, but with the unbreakable bond of chosen kin. The ranch sprawled across the rolling foothills like a defiant holdout against the encroaching wilds, its weathered barn and split-rail fences bathed in the soft haze of mid-morning light. Dust motes swirled in the air as the Viper's convoy rolled to a halt, engines fading to a collective sigh that blended with the low whinny of horses in the corral. Ethan dismounted first, his boots sinking into the loamy earth, the scent of fresh hay and sun-warmed pine rising to meet him. Lily stirred in the sidecar, rubbing sleep from her eyes, the journey's toll etching faint lines of weariness on her young face. Jack scooped her up effortlessly, his broad frame a shield as he carried her toward the main house, a sturdy cabin with shutters drawn like wary eyes. Inside, the air carried the comforting tang of aged wood and simmering stew from a pot left on the stove. Jax's doing, always one step ahead with the practicalities that kept their makeshift family grounded. The crew filtered in behind, their leathers whispering against doorframes, faces set in the quiet determination that had carried them through the night. Harlan's call had bought them time, his allies already circulating fragments of the manifest to trusted channels, but the old man's warning echoed in Ethan's mind. They're coiling tight, Cross, that sheriff's code in the papers. He's the linchpin. Cut him loose, and the hounds scatter. Ethan nodded to himself, leaning against the kitchen counter, the cool granite grounding him as he watched Lily settle on a threadbare couch, clutching the Viper rose blanket like a talisman. She looked up at him, her gaze steady despite the shadows under her eyes. "Is this home now, Uncle Ethan? Auntie Ray said we'd find one someday." The question pierced clean, stirring the embers of guilt that had smoldered since the desert station. Home. The word tasted foreign, laced with the bitterness of losses piled high, the trailer park fire, Ray's vanishing act into her secret safeguards, his own years of riding solo to outpace the regrets. He'd promised her once, under a harvest moon, that he'd be the anchor she could always return to. Instead, he'd let distance widen the gap, dismissing her pleas as wanderlust. Now this child, pieced from Ray's hidden chapters, forced him to rewrite that oath in actions, not echoes. "Not yet, kid," he replied softly, crouching to her level, the floorboards creaking under his weight. "But it's a start. Safe ground to breathe, plan our next move." He ruffled her hair gently, the gesture awkward at first, then natural, like a gear slotting into place. Lily leaned into it, a small smile breaking through, and in that moment, Ethan felt the fracture in his isolation mend, a thread of chosen family weaving through the scars. The Vipers weren't blood, but they'd ridden for Ray's ghost without question, their loyalty a quiet force against the cynicism that had nearly claimed him. Jax joined them, spreading a fresh map across the coffee table, its edges curling like wary fingers. The crew gathered around, coffee mugs steaming in calloused hands, the room filling with the low hum of strategy. Harlan's line confirmed the sheriff. Elias Grant runs the county like his personal fiefdom. That manifest ties him to the drops, payoffs for looking away while the hounds funnel the lost north. Ray crossed him last. She leaked a tip that almost stuck, but he buried it under accident reports. Jax's voice carried the weight of moral outrage, tempered by the restraint they'd all sworn to. No storming the station with engines blazing. That path led to the very corruption they hunted, turning guardians into outlaws. Instead, precision. Gather the full web. Deliver it to Harlan's contacts for a clean sweep. Talon leaned in, tracing a route with a scarred knuckle. Ranch is secure for now, perimeter wired, scouts on rotation, but they're probing. Saw dust plumes on the ridge at dawn. Spotters, not assault. They know we're holding the girl. Murmurs rippled, the crew's eyes flicking to Lily, who met them without flinching. Ethan's chest tightened, the protective surge fierce and unfamiliar. These weren't faceless threats. They were the architects of Ray's silence, preying on vulnerabilities like cracks in parched earth. He thought of the warehouse crates, the child-sized remnants hinting at lives uprooted, and the ethical storm brewed hotter. Justice here demanded more than exposure. It required facing the heart, drawing the poison without letting it spread. As the sun climbed higher, casting golden shafts through the windows, Ethan stepped out onto the porch, the wooden planks warm underfoot. The valley stretched below, a patchwork of green meadows and distant timberlines, the river a silver thread glinting in the light. He lit a cigarette, the flame flickering briefly before the wind snuffed it, a metaphor too on the nose for comfort. Footsteps approached, Reese handing him a radio with a nod. Perimeter check. Nothing close, but chatters up. Grant's calling in favors. Roads blocked east and west. We're pinned, but not blind. Ethan exhaled smoke toward the horizon, the acrid bite mingling with the clean scent of wildflowers nodding in the breeze. Pinned. The word evoked old battles, not of bikes and bars, but the deeper wars within. The fire that scarred him. Ray's plea ignored, the drifter's life as self-imposed exile. Lily's voice from inside called him back, a soft question about lunch, pulling him toward redemption's pull. He crushed the cigarette under his boot, resolve hardening like cooling steel. We don't wait for them to squeeze. Jax, rally the corps. 10 riders, light and fast. We hit Grant's office at dusk, slip in, plant a recorder, get his voice on tape confessing the ties, tie it to the manifest, and Harlan's people move. The plan unfolded in the cabin's dim heart. Voices overlapping in measured cadence, the crew's unity a balm against the rising tension. Lily listened from her perch, her presence a moral compass, reminding them that this ride was for the silenced, the ones corruption overlooked. As afternoon waned, shadows lengthening across the porch, Ethan knelt by her again. You remember what Ray said about promises? She nodded, eyes bright. They survive everything, even the dark. He hugged her then, brief but firm, the scent of her hair, faint soap and earth anchoring him. In her trust, Ray lived on, urging him to be the man who'd keep the word, not just swear it. Dusk crept in like a thief, painting the sky in bruised purples and lingering golds. The selected riders geared up in the barn, engines tuned to whispers. The air thick with oil and anticipation. Ethan mounted his Harley, the familiar rumble vibrating through his bones, a vow renewed. Lily watched from the doorway, Jax at her side, her small wave a beacon in the fading light. They peeled out in staggered formation, headlights off as they descended the trail, the ranch shrinking behind like a fragile sanctuary. The road to Grant's town wound through thickening woods, branches clawing at the dusk, the psychological edge sharpening with every mile. Grant's office squatted on the town's edge, a squat brick building with a flickering sign and patrol cars dozing in the lot. The Vipers ghosted in from the rear, shadows among the pines, hearts steady with the poetry of their purpose. Reese picked the back lock with practiced ease, the click swallowed by the night's hush. Inside, the air was stale, laced with coffee grounds and paperwork's musty decay. Ethan moved to the inner office, planting the recorder under the desk, a tiny device Jax had sourced, capturing every word. They waited in the gloom, breaths synchronized, as footsteps approached from the hall. Grant entered alone, muttering into a phone, his voice a gravelly drawl that confirmed the rot. Yeah, the bikers have the manifest. Hounds want the kid back. Loose end. Tell 'em we'll bury it like the sister. Accident on a curve. No traces. The words sealed it, the recorder whirring silently, truth uncoiling like a serpent from the dark. Ethan's blood thrummed, not with vengeance, but vindication. The moral justice Ray had died pursuing, now in their grasp. They slipped out undetected, the night air cool on their skin as they regrouped on the outskirts. But as engines ignited, a spotlight pierced the trees, patrol lights blooming, sirens wailing faint in the distance. The hounds had anticipated, or Grant had baited. Ethan gunned the throttle, the convoy surging forward, but a barrier loomed ahead, spiked strips glinting maliciously. Tires screeched, bikes swerving in a deadly ballet, one rider, Reese, going down hard, rolling into the ditch with a grunt that twisted Ethan's gut. "Keep moving!" Ethan roared over the wind, circling back in a desperate arc. The crew hauled Reese up, bruised but unbroken, mounting tandem as pursuit closed in. Bullets pinged off metal, warnings more than kills. The chase a thunderous symphony through the night. They broke free on a side path, losing the lights in a fog bank rolling from the river, but the cost lingered. Reese's limp, the narrow escape, a reminder of stakes climbing. Back at the ranch by moon-high, wounds bandaged in the lamplight, Ethan held the recorder, its evidence a fragile flame against the storm. Lily waited on the porch, her hug fierce when he dismounted. "You came back." Simple words, but they forged the link stronger, the chosen family's bond unyielding. Harlan's call came at first light, the tape already en route, promising dawn for the fallen. Yet Ethan knew the heart of the darkness still pulsed, Grant and the Hound's core demanding one final stand. Redemption's road twisted on, pulling him deeper into honor's quiet fire, with Lily's hand in his as the unbreakable guide. The first light of dawn filtered through the cabin's lace curtains like a hesitant promise, casting pale stripes across the worn oak floor. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, the recorder's tiny LED blinking steadily in his palm, a captured heartbeat of corruption that could shatter the shadows. The ranch stirred around him, coffee percolating on the stove, its rich aroma mingling with the earthy scent of dew-kissed fields outside. Lily slept soundly in the next room, her breaths even, the blanket pulled tight as if warding off the night's echoes. The crew had crashed in shifts, bodies slumped in chairs and on cots, their leathers draped over backs like shed-skins. Reese's ankle was wrapped, propped on a stool, but his grin cut through the fatigue as he nursed a mug. "Worth the tumble, brother. That tape's dynamite." Ethan nodded, the weight of the device grounding him. Harlan's allies had the manifest by now, cross-referenced with the tape's damning confessions, Grant's voice tying the Hounds to the vanishings, payoffs and Ray's engineered end. No more whispers. This was the floodlight, illuminating the rot without a single viper hand stained by it. Yet peace felt fragile, the air humming with unspoken tension. Scouts reported movement at first light, rigs circling the foothills, the Hounds sniffing for the prize they'd lost. Grant cornered wouldn't fade quietly. Ethan's scars itched under his sleeve, a reminder of fires past. But Lily's quiet trust had forged something new, a resolve tempered not by isolation, but by the family's unyielding pull. Jax entered from the porch, his boots leaving faint mud prints, face etched with the night's vigil. Perimeters holding. 3 vans parked a mile out, engines cold. They're waiting for orders, but chatters frantic. Harlan's leak hit the wires. Feds are mobilizing. And clean sweep incoming. Grant's holed up in town, calling shots like a cornered rat. The words hung, laced with the moral poetry of their path. Justice not seized in thunder, but revealed in the steady drip of truth. Ray would have approved, her spirit woven into every careful step, the sister who'd hidden Lily not from fear, but to build a bridge to this very moment. Ethan stood, pocketing the recorder, the Woods Creek underscoring his decision. "We end it clean, ride into town, draw 'em out. Show Grant the web's closing, no fight, just the mirror of his own words." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the waking crew, fists bumping in silent oaths. They geared up under the rising sun, engines humming low as the convoy formed in the yard. Lily emerged, rubbing her eyes, the dawn light gilding her tangled hair. She clutched Ethan's hand, her small fingers warm against his calluses. "Are we going home?" she asked, voice soft as the mist rolling off the hills. "Soon, kid. First, we make sure no more shadows chase anyone." He knelt, the gravel biting his knees, and met her gaze. Ray's gaze clear and unbowed. In her, the promise bloomed full, not just survival, but a legacy of honor, the family chosen through scars and silent rides. The crew mounted 50 strong now, a thunder of chrome rolling down the winding road toward town. Wind whipped through, carrying the crisp bite of pine and the faint tang of river mud, the landscape unfolding in golden waves. No colors blazed. This was restraint, the poetry of loyalty facing corruption's howl. Town limits appeared like a faded painting. Dusty streets lined with shuttered shops, the sheriff's office a squat sentinel under the climbing sun. The Vipers fanned out at the edges, engines idling like patient guardians. Ethan rode point, Lily secure in the sidecar, her presence a beacon of what they protected. Patrol cars blocked the main drag, lights flashing erratic, but the air crackled with uncertainty. Grant's men shifting, radios hissing with incoming alerts, whispers spread, feds en route, warrants flashing across lines. The hounds' vans lurked in alleys, shadows uncoiling, but hesitation gripped them, the manifest leak eroding their spine. Grant emerged from the office, face flushed under his wide-brim hat, flanked by 2 deputies whose eyes darted like cornered prey. He spotted Ethan, the recorder glinting as it was held aloft, and his bluster cracked. "Cross! You biker trash think you can waltz in here?" But the words rang hollow, the tape's echo in Ethan's steady voice cutting deeper. "We got your confession, Sheriff. Brake lines on Ray's bike, the kids funneled north, payoffs logged. It's over. Feds have the rest." A hush fell, broken only by the distant wail of sirens, clean badges, Harlan's network closing the net. Grant's men lowered hands from holsters, the moral weight buckling their resolve. One deputy stepped back, muttering about "not worth it," as the hound's engines sputtered to life in retreat, tires spinning gravel in futile fury. No shots fired, no blood spilled, just the unraveling, truth's quiet blade severing the ties. Lily watched from the sidecar, her hand raised in a small wave, not triumph, but release, the shadows fleeing before the light of promises kept. As the feds arrived in a convoy of unmarked sedans, cuffing Grant amid flashing cameras from summoned press, Ethan felt the tension uncoil. The crew stood vigil, a wall of leather and honor, their presence a testament to Ray's hidden fight. Harlan arrived last, nodding approval as the evidence changed hands. "You did right, Cross, clean as a new road." Ethan scooped Lily up, her laughter light as they walked away, the sun warming their backs. The ranch awaited, but so did more. A life rebuilt, Ethan stepping into unclehood with the Vipers as kin, Ray's spirit riding eternal in every mile. Months blurred into healing rhythms, the ranch blooming with Lily's drawings on walls, the crew's visits a steady hum of barbecues and shared stories. Trials unfolded in distant courtrooms, the hounds crumbling under exposed ledgers, Grant's empire dust. Ethan traced the Viper Rose tattoo on his arm, now inked smaller on Lily's wrist, a mark of family forged. Redemption wasn't a destination, but the daily stand. Honoring the lost, shielding the found, letting quiet courage echo louder than any roar. In the quiet evenings, as stars wheeled overhead, Ethan would sit with Lily on the porch, the river's murmur a lullaby. "Auntie Ray was right," she'd say, leaning against him. "Promises make the home." And in her words, Ethan found his own peace, the drifter redeemed, the brother whole, the guardian awakened. The road stretched on, but no longer alone. Bound by loyalty's unbreakable chain, they rode toward horizons bright with chosen light. Thank you for joining this journey of honor and heart. If these tales of redemption resonate, subscribe for more stories that light the way through the shadows.